identity, attempting to portray undocumented immigrants as the culprits behind wealth disparity and competition for low-skilled jobs. Under differential enforcement, Latinos have become the primary targets for deportation, while Asians face targeted scrutiny under national security reviews. Across the nation, arson attacks and clashes have erupted in cities such as Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., prompting multiple National Guard deployments. On the 5th of October, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement released footage showing a protester in Portland, Oregon, who was handcuffed behind their back and transported away face down on a metal flatbed cart. The video was captioned, "Refuse to walk. We'll give you a ride," sparking intense public criticism for its mocking enforcement tactics. The Trump administration's immigration policies have severely damaged America's global image internationally. In November 2025, the US was conspicuously absent from 3 pivotal international forums: the UN Human Rights Council Review in Geneva, Switzerland, the Belém Climate Summit in Brazil, and the G20 Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa. This left 3 glaring empty chairs in the global governance landscape. The Trump administration has successively announced withdrawals from international organizations, including UNESCO and the World Health Organization, and has recently declared the US exit from 66 international bodies. The Washington Post candidly stated that the world will no longer wait for America. Returning to the core question, what does this major shift in immigration policy mean for you? If you hold a green card, you should immediately review your travel records. If you have spent more than 8 months abroad in the past year, or nearly 6 months in a single trip, your green card status is now at high risk. You must keep tax filing records, even if you have no income, and submit tax returns on time every year. Keep your US bank accounts and credit cards active by making monthly purchases. Return to the US regularly, even for short visits, to strengthen your ties to the country. If you are applying for a green card, be aware that approval standards have tightened significantly. In Q3 of 2025, for example, the NIW approval rate dropped to 54.0%, while the EB-1A approval rate fell to 66.6%, a notable decline from previous years. USCIS rigorously scrutinizes any potential public charge risks, so if you have ever utilized public benefits, your application is likely to be denied. Organizational affiliations and giving birth in the US have also become major hurdles in green card applications and require thorough preparation of objective evidence in advance. If you hold a student visa, make sure that your social media profiles are completely clean. Any statements that could be interpreted as anti-American could result in your visa being revoked. The Associated Press has criticized the comprehensive visa screening mechanism for granting the administration excessive discretionary power, while Melnick, a senior researcher at the US Immigration Committee, has called it a new form of McCarthyism. If you are processing immigration applications for family members, you must ensure that your green card or citizenship status is completely secure. If the USCIS determines that you have abandoned your resident status, all family-based immigration applications will be denied. Applicants planning to attend interviews are advised to return to the US in advance to ensure their application status remains valid and meets sponsorship requirements. For long-term immigrants who have lived in the US for 20 or 30 years, this shift highlights that citizenship offers true sanctuary. While a green card offers protection, its limitations are becoming clearer than ever, particularly at the moment. If you have held a green card for 5 years, you are strongly advised to apply for naturalization immediately. Naturalization requires passing an English test and a civics exam, as well as demonstrating good moral character. However, once you become a citizen, your status becomes inalienable. This major shift in immigration policy is an ongoing development. On the 27th of February 2026, new H-1B regulations will come into effect, introducing a wage-weighted lottery system that will transform the competition for highly skilled immigrants. The total employment-based immigration quota may fall to 140,000 in 2026, which could mean the end of the no backlog advantage for EB-5 reserved visas. Immigration processing times will increase further. Chinese EB-1 visa applicants already face waits of 2 years and 10 months, while EB-2 applicants endure waits of 4 years and 4 months, with the potential for further increases. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services (USCIS) is implementing an AI immigration processing initiative to use artificial intelligence to optimize document verification and background checks. Musk, head of the U.S. Efficiency Department, has publicly stated that the length and complexity of green card applications have become urgent issues requiring resolution. This is widely viewed by industry insiders as marking the official entry of the U.S. immigration management system into the era of intelligent processing. However, it also signals stricter scrutiny and higher rejection rates. Tech giants, including Google, Apple, and Microsoft, have issued internal notices to international employees, advising against non-essential travel abroad. The reason is alarming. Once abroad, individuals must reapply for visas, and delays to their return to the US could potentially reach 12 months. Furthermore, stricter visa reviews could result in permanent denial. These warnings reflect the immense uncertainty that even legally employed, highly skilled professionals face under the current policy environment. At its core, this sweeping immigration shift signifies America's transformation from a nation of immigrants to an exclusionary state. For the past 7 decades, America's economic prosperity, technological innovation, and cultural diversity have all been built on the contributions of immigrants. Yet today, the Trump administration appears to view immigrants not as assets, but as burdens. This mindset is not only morally questionable, but also economically counterproductive. While the US is expelling immigrants, other nations are opening their doors. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and European countries are actively attracting highly skilled immigrants. By 2025, the global immigration landscape will have shifted, with multiple countries having clearly and consistently pivoted their policies, transitioning from relatively broad immigration quotas to a more refined, pragmatic targeted screening model. Countries are focusing more and more on applicants who can contribute capital investment, technological advancement, or supplementation of the labor force. For families considering immigration, the real challenge in 2026 goes beyond adapting to these trends. It lies in identifying a stable and efficient pathway to residency. Amidst these complex changes, clear-sighted decision-making is essential for navigating the future. If you are considering the United States as your immigration destination, you should reconsider. Although the United States remains the world's most powerful nation, boasting top-tier universities, cutting-edge technology, and unparalleled cultural diversity, it is becoming less and less welcoming to immigrants. If you are determined to pursue the American dream, be prepared for a long battle. Engage the most skilled immigration attorneys, compile the most comprehensive application materials, and provide the clearest possible proof of residency. In this new era, you must understand that immigrant status is no longer a guaranteed right, but a privilege that must be constantly proven and maintained. You must remain vigilant, obey the law, and avoid anything that could be perceived as improper conduct. Above all, remember that knowledge is power. Understanding these new regulations will empower you to protect yourself and make wise decisions. This sweeping transformation in immigration policy serves as both a wake-up call and an opportunity. While tightening regulations, it has also exposed systemic vulnerabilities. Understanding the essence of this shift is crucial for navigating the new chapter of US immigration. When you have finished watching this video and return to your daily life, remember that these changes are unfolding in America. They may seem distant, but their impact will affect everyone who holds the American dream. Whether you are already in the United States or considering immigrating, it is crucial to assess this transformation rationally. While policy tightening undoubtedly presents greater challenges for immigrants, we must recognize that America's legal framework and system of checks, and although President Trump signed an executive order on his inauguration day to terminate this right, it has not yet taken effect due to multiple preliminary injunctions issued by federal courts. Several federal judges have ruled that the executive order may be unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case. The court injunctions remain in effect, so affected children still retain their birthright citizenship. This serves as a reminder that, under America's system of separation of powers, the executive cannot simply override the Constitution. Regarding H-1B visa reform, the new regulations introduce a weighted selection process based on salary levels, rather than abolishing the existing mechanism entirely. The purpose of this reform is to prioritize visa allocation for foreign workers with higher skills and compensation. This policy has dual implications. On the one hand, it may incentivize employers to increase the salaries of foreign workers, thereby attracting top global talent. On the other hand, however, it could harm startups, research institutions and medical facilities, entities which are often unable to offer the highest salaries, yet which are critical to innovation and public welfare. However, wage levels are not always a perfect proxy for skill, and small to medium enterprises may lose access to international talent by being unable to compete on salary. Many of the specific data points mentioned in the text, such as the detention of immigrants at Guantanamo Bay, precise deportation figures, and the net outflow of immigrants, require further independent verification and contextual explanation. Immigration statistics are often complex and open to misinterpretation, with different sources and methodologies yielding vastly different conclusions. Simultaneously, attributing all immigration policy changes to a single administration or ideology is overly simplistic. The evolution of U.S. immigration policy is influenced by multiple factors, including long-standing bipartisan differences on immigration reform, economic cycles and labor market demands, national security considerations, shifts in public opinion, and international relations and geopolitical factors. For green card holders, understanding their rights is crucial. While a green card grants permanent residency, it does not mean that ties with the United States can be completely severed. It is therefore prudent to maintain tax records, retain a U.S. address, and make regular visits to the country. Although naturalization offers stronger legal protections to those who are eligible, it also entails new obligations and responsibilities that warrant careful consideration. Above all, it is essential to ensure compliance with all laws and regulations to avoid actions that could jeopardize one's status. Those applying for or holding work visas should maintain open communication with their employers too. Understand the implications of new policies. Considering alternative immigration pathways or opportunities in other countries while maintaining flexibility is also sensible. Immigration law is complex and constantly evolving, so the advice of a professional immigration attorney is indispensable. As mentioned in the original text, tech giants such as Google, Apple and Microsoft have indeed advised their international employees to exercise caution when leaving the country. This reflects the fact that even highly skilled individuals working legally face greater uncertainty in the current policy environment. For those contemplating immigration to the US, a comprehensive assessment is necessary. The US remains a global leader in many areas, boasting top-tier universities, advanced technology industries, and a diverse cultural environment. However, the increased uncertainty surrounding immigration pathways requires the careful weighing of pros and cons. It is also worth considering immigration policies in other developed nations, such as Canada, Australia, and those in Europe, which may offer more stable and clearly defined pathways. Immigration is a major life decision that should be based on reliable information and long-term considerations rather than short-term emotional reactions. It is important to recognize that changes to U.S. immigration policy are not an isolated phenomenon, but should be understood within a broader global context. Indeed, immigration policies worldwide are shifting towards a targeted selection model that prioritizes attracting highly skilled talent and capital. This is not unique to the United States, but rather a common strategy among nations competing for talent in the era of globalization. Furthermore, immigration policies often fluctuate with political cycles. The United States, for example, has historically experienced multiple cycles of immigration policy tightening and relaxation. The current changes may also evolve as the political landscape changes. From an economic perspective, the U.S. economy's reliance on immigrant labor is structural. From agriculture to technology and healthcare to services, immigrants fill many critical roles. Federal Reserve Chair Powell has indeed pointed out that tightening immigration policies exacerbates the shrinking labor supply. Restrictive immigration policies may incur economic costs, such as labor shortages, diminished innovation capacity, and accelerated population aging. And these practical pressures could ultimately prompt policy adjustments. In the information age, maintaining information literacy is paramount. It is important to distinguish between facts and opinions. While policy changes are facts, Interpretations of their impact may be influenced by ideology. Relying on a single source of information is risky. It is better to compare reports from diverse perspectives. Approach statistics with caution and make sure you understand their source, methodology, and context. The most reliable sources of authoritative information on immigration policy are official websites such as U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, and the State Department. The current immigration landscape is undeniably challenging and uncertain. However, panic and despair are not constructive responses. The most important steps for anyone involved in the U.S. immigration system are staying informed by continuously monitoring policy updates from reliable sources, seeking professional assistance by consulting qualified immigration attorneys at critical decision points, protecting your rights by understanding and exercising your legal entitlements, remaining flexible by preparing contingency plans for different scenarios, making decisions based on facts, not fear. The U.S. immigration system is undergoing significant transformation, presenting challenges while exposing systemic issues. However, the U.S. constitutional framework, judicial independence, and civil society are still functioning. Federal courts have repeatedly blocked executive orders deemed unconstitutional or exceeding authority, while civic organizations continue to advocate for immigrant rights, and the media continues to oversee and report on policies. The ultimate trajectory of this transformation will depend on the outcomes of legal challenges, pressures from economic realities, the evolution of social consensus, and future political shifts. Notably, American society does not hold a monolithic view on immigration issues. While the original text states that more than half of Americans believe the Trump administration has gone too far on immigration, a significant proportion of the public supports stricter border controls. This divergence reflects deep-seated contradictions within American society regarding national identity, economic interests, and security considerations. The future direction of immigration policy will gradually become clearer as these competing forces emerge. For immigrants who have already established lives in the United States, citizenship offers the strongest legal protection. If you have held a green card for 5 years and meet the other requirements for naturalization, applying for citizenship is a decision that is certainly worth considering. Naturalization requires passing an English test and a civics exam, as well as demonstrating good moral character. Once you become a citizen, however, your status is fully protected by the Constitution and cannot easily be revoked due to policy changes. Nevertheless, not everyone can or wishes to pursue naturalization. For green card holders who wish to retain their original nationality or who temporarily do not meet the requirements for naturalization, it is equally important to maintain the stability of their current status. Demonstrating substantive ties to the United States through tax records, bank accounts, proof of residence, family, relationships, and so on, provides compelling evidence when facing scrutiny from immigration authorities. For foreign employees on work visas, establishing clear communication channels with employers, understanding the company's strategies for navigating immigration policy, changes, and recognizing one's value within the organization can help to gain greater initiative in uncertain times. At the same time, continuously enhancing professional skills strengthens competitiveness in the global talent market and prepares individuals for potential career transitions or geographic relocations. In this era of uncertainty, the best choices each individual can make for themselves and their families are to maintain rationality, stay informed, and be prepared. The path to immigration is never plain sailing, but understanding the rules, respecting the law, seeking professional guidance, and making decisions based on facts will help you to navigate the complex immigration system and find your own way forward. Whether you ultimately choose to remain in the States or explore other opportunities, these principles will serve as your most reliable compass. Imagine this. You open your phone today to find that your green card, which you have held for years, has suddenly become invalid. Everything you have built in America, your home, your job, your children's schools, and years of tax records, vanishes into thin air. This isn't alarmist rhetoric. It's the reality that tens of thousands of immigrants have faced since 2025. On the 20th of January 2025, Trump once again stood in the Oval Office of the White House and signed the first batch of executive orders for his second term, officially commencing the most radical transformation of the U.S. immigration system in 6 decades. The scale, speed and far-reaching impact of this upheaval far exceeded anyone's expectations. Today, we delve deep into this ongoing immigration crisis to explore why previously secure statuses suddenly became precarious. On the day of his inauguration, Trump signed the Securing Our Borders executive order, declaring a national emergency at the southern U.S. border. This policy, seemingly aimed solely at illegal immigrants, quietly opened Pandora's box. Immediately afterwards, an even more disruptive executive order was issued, the termination of birthright citizenship. But what is birthright citizenship? Under the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, anyone born on U.S. soil automatically becomes a U.S. citizen. This right has existed for over 150 years and has been regarded as the cornerstone of American immigration policy. However, the Trump administration argues that this rule requires reinterpretation. The new order stipulates that if neither parent is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, their child born in the U.S. will no longer automatically receive citizenship. What does this mean? It means that children born in the U.S. to parents holding student, work or tourist visas will no longer automatically receive citizenship. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 86% of children under 18 in immigrant families were born in the United States, and this figure has more than doubled over the past 30 years. These families are now facing an identity crisis. But this is only the beginning. On the 29th of January, Trump signed his first official bill since taking office, the Leahy-Riley Act, named after a 22-year-old nursing student who was murdered by an undocumented Venezuelan while out jogging in February 2024. The law mandates the immediate detention and deportation proceedings of any undocumented immigrant charged with crimes such as theft, robbery, or assault, even if they have not yet been convicted. Sounds reasonable, right? After all, it targets criminal illegal immigrants. However, the expedited removal mechanism established by this bill was quickly extended to legal immigrants too. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement gained the unprecedented authority to detain and deport any non-citizen deemed a potential threat to public safety, without a court order. On the 4th of February, the first military transport aircraft carrying deported immigrants departed from Fort Bliss in Texas, bound for the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba. Yes, that Guantanamo where terrorists are held. At the signing ceremony, Trump bluntly stated, "We can't trust their home countries to keep them, so we're sending them to Guantanamo." As of the 19th of February, over 140 immigrants had been transferred to Guantanamo. The immigrants sent to Guantanamo hailed from 26 countries, including 9 Latin American nations, 5 African nations for Asian nations, 3 Caribbean nations to Pacific Island nations, and 3 European nations, including Russia. According to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, these individuals had been convicted of serious crimes, including murder, sexual offenses, drug smuggling, kidnapping, and robbery. However, many detainees were actually sent to this place, dubbed America's most dreaded prison, for relatively minor offenses such as drink driving or theft. The White House posted a video on social media set to light-hearted music showing handcuffed immigrants being escorted onto deportation flights. The caption read, ASMR, illegal immigrant deportation flight. This practice of turning human suffering into entertainment drew strong global condemnation, but the White House paid no heed. On the 6th of April, they released another video showing a group of handcuffed deportees being escorted by US police towards the border, again accompanied by cheerful, light-hearted music. Even more disturbing is the fact that this deportation storm is spreading from undocumented to legal immigrants. On the 19th of March, the Social Security Administration abruptly suspended the post-arrival demographic program, which had previously allowed legal immigrants to automatically receive Social Security numbers when applying for work permits or citizenship. Following the suspension, millions of immigrants awaiting work authorization or naturalization found themselves in the predicament of being legal but unable to work. Although the Social Security Administration claimed that the 90-day suspension was to evaluate policy processes, the program remains suspended to this day. Then, on the 27th of May, the Trump administration ordered a halt to new interview appointments for student and exchange visitor visas. Tens of thousands of students preparing to study abroad were left stranded in the visa process. Although the US Department of State announced the resumption of visa applications on the 18th of June, it imposed an additional requirement that came as a shock. All F, M and J visa applicants must make all their social media accounts public. This means that all your social media posts, chat histories and moments on platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and WeChat will be subject to review by the US government. In June, the Trump administration terminated temporary protected status TPS for Afghanistan and several other countries, suddenly placing thousands of previously lawful immigrants at risk of deportation. However, on the 18th of July, the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York extended TPS for around 521,000 Haitian immigrants until February 2026. However, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security immediately issued a statement strongly opposing this decision, indicating that it was seeking ways to overturn the court ruling. On the 12th of September, a federal appeals court ultimately rejected appeals by immigrant rights advocates, approving the government's revocation of temporary legal status for hundreds of thousands of immigrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. By August, the policy had escalated further. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security launched ongoing reviews of over 55 million U.S. visa holders, threatening to revoke visas or deport for improper conduct. But what constitutes improper conduct? The criteria are shockingly vague. A DUI offense, traffic violations, or even inappropriate remarks on social media could become grounds for visa revocation. On the 21st of August, the Pew Research Center released shocking data showing that the U.S. immigrant population had experienced its first net outflow in 60 years, dropping from 53.3 million at the start of 2026 to 51.9 million. This historic inflection point in immigrant numbers, which served as a vital component of post-war U.S. economic prosperity, serves as preliminary evidence that the Trump administration's hardline immigration policies are backfiring. Meanwhile, scrutiny of green card holders is intensifying. The Trump administration has explicitly stated that green card status no longer guarantees permanent residency. Vice President Pence publicly declared that green card holders have no right to permanent residence in the United States. This statement dispelled the notion of permanent residency. New regulations stipulate that green card holders who are absent from the U.S. for more than 179 days on a single trip, or who accumulate over 8 months of absence in a calendar year, may be taken into the small black room by immigration authorities upon their return. They will then be required to provide proof of their ties to the United States. If they are absent for over a year without a re-entry permit, they are likely to be denied entry outright. Immigration authorities will deem the individual to have abandoned their permanent residency rights and demand the immediate surrender of their green card. Even more critically, if you have filed immigration petitions for relatives, all such petitions will be denied once you are deemed to have abandoned your permanent resident status. A heartbreaking case illustrates this. A Chinese green card holder who had not returned to the US for 4 years due to receiving medical treatment in China filed an immigration petition for her unmarried daughter, who had aged out of the visa lottery. After 8 years, the daughter was refused a visa at her interview and the entire petition. 8 years of waiting vanished overnight. Who faces the highest risk under this policy? The first group are China-US commuters, who travel between the two countries annually but accumulate over 8 months' stay in China. The second group comprises China retirees who live long-term in China after retiring, returning to the US once a year to maintain their green card. The third group comprises remote workers based in China who perform remote work for US companies. All three groups now face an extremely high risk of losing their status. On the 29th of October, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security issued an interim final rule stating that work permit applicants submitting applications on or after 30 October will no longer automatically receive extensions. Then, on the 4th of December, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services further reduced the validity period for work permits under categories such as asylum and refugee status, slashing it from 5 years to just 18 months. This means that many legally employed immigrants have suddenly found that their work permits are nearing expiration and that the prospects of renewing them are uncertain. On the 5th of November, a senior U.S. State Department official revealed that, since President Trump returned to the White House earlier this year, the US government has revoked around 80,000 non-immigrant visas for offences including drink driving, assault and theft. This figure is more than double last year's total. The US Department of Homeland Security issued a statement claiming that over 2.5 million illegal immigrants had left the United States by 2025. However, this figure includes a significant number of legal immigrants who were forced to leave due to visa revocations or having been deemed to have abandoned their green card status. On the 22nd of December, the Trump administration announced that it would increase the cash subsidy for the voluntary departure of undocumented immigrants to $3,000, providing free return flights and encouraging immigrants to leave the US voluntarily before the end of the year. While this policy may seem humane, it actually uses economic incentives to accelerate their departure. According to Brazilian federal police data, at least 3,294 Brazilian immigrants were deported from the US in 2025, representing a record high and nearly 100% growth compared to the 1,648 deported in 2024. However, the Trump administration's immigration policies extend beyond deportation, reshaping the entry thresholds of the entire immigration system. On the 23rd of December, the US Department of Homeland Security formally amended the H-1B work visa lottery rules, shifting from random selection to a wage-steered weighted lottery mechanism. This new regulation will take effect on the 27th of February 2026. This means that highly skilled, high-salary professionals will see significantly improved visa approval rates, while competition for low-wage positions will become even more intense. In September, the Trump administration signed an executive order requiring employers to pay a $100,000 application fee for each foreign H-1B applicant, substantially increasing the cost for companies hiring foreign skilled workers. Many small and medium-sized enterprises have stated that this fee is exorbitant and will force them to stop hiring foreign employees. At the same time, the Trump administration launched the so-called Golden Card program. On the 26th of February, Trump announced a new pathway to residency and eventual citizenship for foreigners investing at least $5 million in US projects. This program centers on exorbitant fees, enabling individuals or businesses to sponsor expedited residency approvals in exchange for payment. On the 3rd of April, Trump unveiled the gold-plated Golden Card at the White House, touting it as an innovative way to attract the world's top talent and capital. However, critics argue that this amounts to selling US citizenship and placing a price tag on immigration rights. It enables the wealthy to cut the queue while ordinary immigrants are pushed out of the system. On the 18th of July, the US began imposing a $250 visa integrity fee on tourists, students and business travelers requiring non-immigrant visas. This fee will be adjusted for inflation starting in 2026. It is refundable if visa terms are complied with, but cannot be waived, and an additional payment is required for the I-94 form. Analysts warn that this additional charge will significantly undermine the appeal of the US as a tourist destination during major international events such as the 2028 Olympics. The Trump administration's immigration policies also manifest as targeted restrictions on specific countries. From the 1st of January 2026, citizens of 7 countries, Burkina Faso, Laos, Mali, Niger, Sierra Leone, South Sudan and Syria, will be prohibited from entering the United States. This ban applies to both immigrant and non-immigrant categories of travelers. On the 5th of April, US Secretary of State Rubio stated that, due to the transitional government of South Sudan's failure to promptly accept repatriated citizens, the US had revoked visas for all South Sudanese passport holders and restricted further visa issuance. By 2025, protests against hardline immigration policies and enforcement actions had already erupted over 1,000 times within the United States. In June, public demonstrations erupted in Los Angeles, hailed as the City of Angels, against targeted raids on specific groups. The protests ultimately escalated into violent clashes. Roads were blocked, cars were set alight, and rubber bullets and tear gas were deployed. The unrest rapidly spread to multiple cities across the nation. On the 4th of July, Independence Day, protests erupted in numerous locations nationwide. Demonstrators took to the streets carrying banners to express their anger over government immigration and tax policies that they perceived as robbing the poor to feed the rich. US media outlets attributed these social divisions to the Trump administration's immigration policies, with polls showing that over half of Americans believed the administration had gone too far on immigration. By 2025, the number of detained immigrants who had died had reached its highest level in 2 decades. In January 2026, the Good Death reignited nationwide outrage. This young Venezuelan immigrant had died in custody, and an autopsy revealed severe abuse. Legally, disputes over issues such as birthright citizenship remain unresolved. The Supreme Court partially upheld the executive order repealing birthright citizenship, allowing 28 states to implement it independently and exposing its tendency towards judicial compromise. After a federal judge suspended expedited deportation orders, the Trump administration swiftly countersued for judicial overreach, once again challenging judicial authority. America's ongoing immigration litigation, characterized by frequent reversals, has resulted in inconsistent enforcement standards across states, creating a legal fragmentation dilemma for immigration governance. Hardline immigration policies also inflict comprehensive damage on the U.S. economy. In July, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell explicitly stated that tightening immigration policies is accelerating the decline in labor supply. Data shows that the proportion of immigrants in the U.S. workforce has fallen from 20% in early 2025 to 19% today, representing a loss of around 750,000 workers in less than a year. Without replenishment from immigrants, the total U.S. population will begin to shrink by 2033. The U.S. labor market is now facing a dual crisis. In sectors such as agriculture and construction, which rely heavily on immigrants, domestic workers currently account for less than 1.3% of the workforce, while vacancies for low-wage manual labor positions continue to increase. On the other hand, the U.S. labor shortage is accelerating amid declining immigration. Consider the visa freeze for foreign truck drivers. Foreign drivers currently account for 18% of the workforce, while the shortage of domestic drivers stands at 89,000. This reveals the structural dependence of the transportation sector on immigrant labor. Politically, there is a significant disconnect between public sentiment and government policy. Polls indicate that only 40% of Americans support current immigration policies, while 64% believe that maintaining open policies is crucial. From a demographic perspective, the Hispanic population is growing 3 times faster than the white population, and its political influence is steadily rising. Meanwhile, Trump's approval rating among this group has plummeted from 43% during the 2024 election to 32%. His hardline deportation policies and the widespread fear they provoked are key contributing factors. The Republican Party uses an anti-immigration narrative to reinforce white conservative